So in this umbrella that we refer to as the .NET Framework, we have a series of different elements and subcomponents. Among these are things such as the .NET languages, the underlying framework class libraries, the common language runtime, also the results of our compiles, our .NET binaries, which we refer to as assemblies. And the list goes on and on and on of elements that we would lump together into this huge .NET umbrella. If we were to sort of graphically look at a picture of what the .NET Framework is all about, it might look something like this. At the very bottom, we have our Windows operating system. Obviously, everything runs through the operating system. So when we're writing an application, what we're really doing is providing instructions for the operating system. So that means that sitting on top of the operating system, we have to have some sort of application runtime. The common language runtime for .NET is basically an interpreter. We take this application code that's compiled to this intermediate code, and the common language runtime is responsible for processing that into actual machine code that can be run by the operating system. Now, the common language runtime has a couple of elements that are within it as well, such as our common type system, which is the underlying consistent data types that are going to be used in every single language, and what's referred to as the common language specification. This is essentially the language specification or a set of rules or requirements that any .NET compiler is required to adhere to. So this is basically the set of restrictions that make .NET languages, make them what they are. Well, the way that we manipulate our data and objects essentially using the .NET languages is by using what's called the framework class library or the .NET base classes. And this is a set of classes that expose the basic functionality that are provided by .NET. So we have classes such as system.console, for example, that represents the console in a console-based application. We have classes that represent the underlying data types. We have classes that represent window objects and control objects and web objects. So the framework class library is basically a set of abstractions of all of the elements and interfaces that we're going to use when we build our applications. So how we manipulate those framework class library elements is through our user interfaces or web service kinds of interfaces. So web services, for example, are little pluggable elements and services that are available through the internet if you wanted to provide services to an application to kind of run off in the background and make subscription style services or things of that nature. You can build those using web service interfaces. We also have user interfaces such as WinForms, which are our Windows interfaces, and what are called web forms, which are our internet or our web-based user interfaces. All of those interfaces are basically providing the structure from which our applications can be built. The .NET languages, therefore, are used to manipulate these underlying classes, whether we're talking about specifically the higher level services, such as web services, user interface services, etc., or the lower level elements of the framework class libraries. It's the responsibility and role of the .NET languages to physically manipulate these objects for the creation of your own applications. So basically what we're doing in our .NET languages is we're creating our own classes. And these classes that we generate are going to be implementing and using the services that are provided by the other classes that are in the .NET framework.